Lifeweaver sucks. I'm gonna fix it. Okay, so welcome. This is the first episode of what's gonna end up being a series where I kind of rework Overwatch heroes, at least on a pure theoretical level. I don't have access to any dev kits or anything like that, so I don't really know how these things work. And obviously, I can't test these, so who knows? Maybe some of them are like awful, terrible ideas, but I don't really have any way to change that. So basically, what I'm gonna be doing in this series is that I'll be making up an idea of how to rework characters. I'll run through what the fantasy of that character's hero design is supposed to be. And then I'll explain why I think there are problems, what's wrong with the character, and then I'll go into how I want to fix those problems. And then hopefully at the end I'll have a little bit of chat discussion about what they like, what they dislike, and then that'll be how this series goes. For this first one, I'm keeping it pretty simple. This character needs a lot of work, but I don't think everything is wrong or like super bad about this character, which is surprising for Lifeweaver because I know a lot of people don't like it. Some ground rules. I don't care about numbers. It doesn't really matter. I don't have any access to figure out what would be good. 10-second cooldown. I'm not going to do any of that kind of stuff. You'll hear me say stuff like it does like a moderate amount of damage, or maybe it's on a low cooldown, just to get in the ballpark of what I'm kind of thinking, because obviously numbers do go into balance and hero design to an extent, so they are kind of important, but right now it's mainly just theory. Also, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that anything is possible. No budget restrictions, no time restrictions, no engine restrictions. Anything that I say will work, unless it is like so anti-Overwatch that it's like silly to even think about. But we'll just go ahead and work with the assumption that anything that I say is possible and feasible. Okay. And then, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this first abomination of a hero. It's this guy. Lifeweaver Overwatch. He is a bit of a silly one. He is an interesting case. So, for his design, Lifeweaver was hyped up as Overwatch's next support that would reward non-mechanical skills like positioning, ability timing, all of those kind of things, which was initially met with some concerns. Other characters that are like this, Mercy, Moira, even Brig to an extent, are kind of contentious, and characters with lower skill floors sometimes mean that the skill ceiling isn't that high either. So when they're good, they're really frustrating characters to play with and against. See Mauga, Not a great character, not a fun one. So a lot of times the game will suffer because these easier characters aren't properly integrated into the systems, like with the other high skilled characters. Also, Lifeweaver, when he was shown off, there was one particular ability that caught everyone's eye as something that didn't exist on any other kind of character. That, of course, is Life Grip. It's something that breaks a lot of rules of Overwatch. It just kind of takes agency away from other players on your team, not the enemy team, on your team, which is really the big thing. So sometimes Lifeweaver could just troll and take you out of positions, but really the big problem is that in order for Lifeweaver to get his like big super saving ability, he has to give up, or he has to take position away from other people, which is really bad for your team because this character, doesn't have too much offensive, which we'll get into. But yeah, basically Lifeweaver's whole thing is that he is a lower skill floor character, and he finds a lot of value out of positioning and survivability. Survivability is the big thing. He's got pedal, dash, tree, grip, like everything that he does is based on survivability for himself, for his teammates. He plays really, really well with slow comps, and he can keep himself alive decently well against most characters. And you know what? I'm gonna say it. I think this guy's kind of fun. Okay? I like Lifeweaver. Okay? Listen, the fantasy of like constantly repositioning in the middle of fights and changing vertical positions all the time combined with a lot of his like unique abilities, which platform is something I've been asking about for a while as an ability. Sure, I wanted it as like a brawl extension, so you could play brawl on vertical maps and get your team around the map, and that's not really how Lifeweaver plays. But still, like just having like more vertical mobility that you can help your team get, I really want. Like I think that's a great way to interact with the maps more than just being like, oh, you can only play dive here. Well, no, maybe you could play Lifeweaver here and get your team up to high ground more effectively. You know what I mean? It's something that I've wanted, and honestly, when I play Lifeweaver, I find it really fun. The things of his kit work well together. Dashing and using your survivability tools to get around the corner and help somebody. You make a lot of cool decisions on Lifeweaver. So, yeah, I mean, like I personally find him really fun. So, yeah, but the problem is he kind of sucks, like really bad. Um, yeah, so the main problem with Lifeweaver is that if you look at these abilities, we're going to go ahead and ignore Parting Gift because it doesn't exist anymore. Um, it's all defensive. Nearly everything other than like Thorn Volley and arguably Tree of Life are all defensive abilities. Pull, tree, dash, pedal, primary fire to an extent, all are used to save your team or provide indirect pressure through healing or utility and stuff like that, positioning. Um, but Lifeweaver himself can't make aggressive plays. And using some of his other abilities like Tree and even like Pedal to be aggressive or to help your team aggress is taking survivability away from Lifeweaver, which he really needs. So basically, Lifeweaver is not able to enable anything. And I think the problem is not with defensive supports. Brig is a defensive support, obviously. But what Brig does that Lifeweaver doesn't is disruption. When she is defending, she is putting pressure on the enemy. Whip shot displaces people. Bash does a lot of damage, So Brig has ways to dispel and push the enemy back, The big difference between the two is that Brig takes positioning back, takes space back, and Lifeweaver has to give space to keep finding value. And that's just inherently not going to work in this engine. Honestly, in Overwatch 1, maybe Lifeweaver would have been decent in like a super poke comp. But he just does not function in Overwatch 2 anymore because space and angles and harder positioning like that is way more important than just spamming. Like in a double shield comp would have been. But of course, double shield comp still had plenty of angles and positioning that you needed to take. So yeah, I wanted to go. So let's talk about some solutions potentially, right? So when I was making this and thinking theory crafting with Lifeweaver, I didn't want to change too much about him because I think that the healing is fine and Thorn Volley is okay. You don't need to have big damage to be useful as support, although most of them do, to be honest. And I thought Tree was a decently good ult. I like how it gives overhealth if you're at full health. And the dash, I mean, there's not much to it. I wouldn't change much about his survivability. It's the main abilities that need something that can enable, that can provide pressure to the enemy. So what I initially toyed around with in my head was like taking life grip and making it so you could, instead of just only pulling enemies towards you, you could throw them or like push them so that you could take positions or even give them like a tether so that if you're tethered to an enemy, you could throw them somewhere and then pull them back. But I honestly think that's just really jarring, and the more that you mess with other people's positioning, the more likely some things are going to go wrong. And if you have the ability to throw somebody, you could totally just throw them off the map, which is not good. So I decided to make all of my changes to pedal platform. So this is what pedal platform is like now. Basically, it's just you throw it on the ground, and then once somebody walks on top of it, whether it be Lifeweaver, a teammate, an enemy, it goes up. That's about it. You can get some extra height if you jump right as it's ending and stuff like that. But That's pretty much it. It's just a platform, right? I think we could do a lot more with this ability. So first, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to rename it to just Pedal, and I'll show you why in a second. But the first change that I would do is that I would make Pedal activatable. So no longer will you just pass, anyone will passively run over and activate it. Lifeweaver actively has to hit the button again, and then he will pull, or he'll be able to raise it. You'll still be able, I don't know if you can break it with F or interact right now, but you should be able to break it with interact and then place another one whenever you choose. If you decide you don't like the position of it and you haven't activated it, you can break it and put another one down. Right now, this pedal is going to work pretty much the same as it does on live. It's just going to lift you up a certain height. I think that height is pretty good, especially because you can get the extra little momentum from it. But crucially about this one, I would give pedal a slow. So if enemies walked on it and it raises them up, then they're going to have a little bit of a movement penalty, so they don't just fall right off of it. Because a lot of times I'll try to use pedal aggressively on live, and they'll fly up, and like halfway through, they'll just fall off, and they don't even know they were on the pedal to begin with. So I would definitely give it some sort of way so that they're kind of stuck on pedal for longer, so that you've just placed them just a little longer, or you've given them more time for your team to shoot them. That just gives you a little bit of more offensive incentive, and it gives you like, oh, do I want to save my pedal for me, or should I throw it at the enemy and see if I can, catch them off guard? I think that'd be a little more like cool decision making. But obviously, just giving pedal a slow, that's not a rework. So the reason that I'm calling it a rework is that you'll see here I have it pedal under like parentheses ground. I now want to give Lifeweaver the option to put pedal on the ground, which is the only place you can put it currently, on a wall, or on the ceiling. And depending on where you put it, it's going to have a different effect. So for the first one, excuse my graphic will come into play. I'll show you. I know it's a little, it's just a pink box. So this is going to be pedal when you throw it on a wall. So the way that I envisioned this is that it works like a bounce pad. So you know how the bounce pads on like Oasis, they just, you step on them, bounce up, right? And you'll go a certain distance. This one would still be activatable by Lifeweaver. In fact, all three forms are activatable. But when you get hit by this, or when he activates it, it does like a bounce. So basically, when you get hit by it as it's moving, it will push you further than the pedal goes, right? So you'll be moved a considerable distance. It's basically just a knockback. So it's like a knockback that he can provide anywhere on the map. Or not anywhere on the map, just like, at different places. He doesn't have to be there for it. He can, if his pedal is there, then you can knock back. So this is going to be really good at like getting, as a get off me tool. He can play like a Brig, maybe, just not as good because it's on a much longer cooldown than Whip Shot. You have to have a wall for it to work. Or if people are pushing, you can throw the pedal on the wall and boop them off of high grounds, boop them into the open, away from cover. I think that's going to incentivize people, I'm putting Lifeweaver into the spam category. Like, he is going to be a spam character no matter what. So why not help the spam? Why not help what the comp is trying to do? This way, you could even play Lifeweaver with, like, Ball or something like that. Like, Lifeweaver can help find good opportunities for slam and get people out of the open and stuff like that. And then afterwards, the pedal will stay on the map and have its however much health it has, 400, and kind of act like a wall. So that if you need to, Lifeweaver can actually just use it as cover, or your team can use it as cover. Not much, because it's not going to have that much health. But it's still there, So here, I have a little graphic to show you. I pray that this works. There you go. Basically, it activates on the wall here, and then it's going to move a certain distance and stop. And, like, that's where the wall will be, right? So that's kind of the idea. It's to give Lifeweaver some way to disrupt the enemy so that they can't just get to him. And that means he can keep his ground and help his team keep their ground too. Because if they walk at your teammate, you can throw Petal and bounce them off so that you don't have to pull them. Instead, you have some other way to disrupt and save your team. The third reason, the thing I had, was the ceiling. Um, Again, a great graphic. I know. This is the one that I'm not too sold on because it could be a little annoying to deal with. But basically, this is a trap. So when you activate the platform, thorns will come a considerable distance down from the ceiling, and initially it's going to do a big burst damage if they're caught in the thorns. But being in the thorns, either because you're still in them because you just got hit, or you're trying to walk through them, will slow you down a little and do a little bit of damage. Again, I want to emphasize that they're little. I don't want this to be super, super annoying. But basically, Lifeweaver can use this and throw it as like a deterrent from flankers, because Lifeweaver struggles against flankers if he's trying to save teammates, basically. Either he just has to pull them off their angle, he can't help them duel at all, or if they come to him, he has to just stop everything he's doing, use every single ability he has, and keep himself alive, and half the time, it's not going to work. So, giving him some offensive capability to, like, kind of catch people on the flank will let him stay where he wants to be, like, a lot more often, and maybe even secure kills by himself. Again, similar to how Brig has Bash and can keep flankers away. So you can kind of keep this as, like, you can activate it to create, like, a wall so that they can't cross, or you can do big damage if you can catch them in it. So it creates space, but it also denies flanks and everything. Again, this is more aggression. This is more stopping the enemy from what they're doing rather than just annoying the enemy when you pull them away from something. Again, it is a trap, and traps are not the best, healthiest thing for Lifeweaver. I do think this is remedied a little bit by the fact that he has to activate it, and he actively has to know when somebody is going to be there. And Petal, once he's activated it, it doesn't stay forever like it does on live. So if he activates it too early, they could either break it or they can just wait it out. And again, the Petal is huge, and you do have to place it and wait for them to come. So there's a possibility, very likely, that people will be walking through a door and see the Petal and break it before you get there. So I think Petal is the riskiest one to use, unless you just use it like mid-fight. But again, if you're using it like mid-fight, you have to be inside, which Lifeweaver doesn't really want to be inside. So that's why I think that this is probably okay, because the situations where you would be using this are not going to be like nearly as like often as the other two. But again, I'm not completely sold. In fact, I could definitely be persuaded against the trap and have some kind of other way to I don't know, something that maybe comes from the ceiling and snatches somebody and they have to stay there for 2 seconds. I don't know. But yeah, that's what I would do to Lifeweaver. Basically, this gives this gives him some more room to make plays. He has more agency in the game. Lifeweaver is already doing a lot of things, so it may be kind of an overwhelming amount of things to keep track of, but he definitely needs some way to deny the enemy value rather than just, protect his team. It's too oriented around his team and not oriented around what he does to the enemy. So, yeah, that's what I would do with Lifeweaver. I am going to go ahead. Oh, it looks like I had chat on screen the whole time, but I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to chat. Anybody have any suggestions, thoughts, anything? You think defensive supports have no place in WW2? You think supports need to have some sort of offensive playmaking agency? There is a similar shift away from purely defensive supports in League recently. Curious how many people share the sentiment. Again, it's like Brig is a defensive support, but I see what you mean. It's like, let me turn the chat back on for this. Do you think defensive supports have no place? I think they have a place. The thing is that, like, they just aren't nearly as good most of the time. Like, Brig is not always great. Uh, she's not good by herself. You know, she's protecting other people, and she doesn't have great, like, what's it called, combos anymore. So maybe yes, purely defensive is bad, but also Brig has playmaking potential. Technically, Lifeweaver does, but it's not good playmaking potential. You know what I mean? Like it is playmaking and it is somewhat offensive. You know, um, like rally can be offensive, but I think there is a place, just how maps are designed in Overwatch, that some maps are very defensive and high grounds and all of that. And you don't need every single, and again, you can swap mid map, and I think that's key, is that you can swap mid map. So, you know, you can, if you're finding some problem like, oh, Brig's a little too defensive here, like it's hard for us to break their hold, then you can swap to a hero that's a little more offensive oriented. The problem with Lifeweaver is that there's no reason to ever play him, right? So I don't think that's much of an issue that defensive supports exist, because they're niche, and there's always a way for you to get more offense. You know, because again, I like Lifeweaver, like I really do. I think he's really fun. Just flying around the map like that, it's like really interesting. No other character does it like that. So I would definitely I would definitely want, I don't know if I would want another defensive support like soon, but I think that they could try it again, you know? Like, no, I was gonna say Ilari is defensive, but she really isn't. Sorry for another league parallel. No, please. I mean, it's another team-based game. Another league parallel, but being able to affect your team's position has always been super controversial in basically any form. Do you think it's worth keeping grip around, even with the proposed changes? Ah, to be honest, I just didn't have a good solution for grip. Um, grip is a weird one because it's like really key to his. I don't know. You know, now that I'm saying it, bonus round. What if I'm cooking? You could, your gripped targets were affected by your pedal, and you could grip them and then activate your pedal while they're being gripped if they go through the line of sight, and then you like have now repositioned them instead of just pulling them back to you. So like you wall bounce them. Like you could grip them, give them like the invulnerability and heal, and then like bounce them back into the fight. That'd be really funny. Or you could like bounce them over to high grounds that they wouldn't normally be able to get to, or stuff like that. Or like then you don't have to be with them. Like you can keep angles. I don't know. That probably wouldn't work. It'd probably be super niche, really finicky, but I think that'd be really silly. Or you can just give them like a platform. So like you're gripping the midair, you throw platform under them, and you let go. Maybe you can let go of grip. Honestly, that might be what they want. Um, grip grip being like a, you pull it and they always go to where you are. It's, I think it's like that to prevent trolling, but if you could be able to, like, when you pull them, you know how you pull things in the source engine, you grab them and then it's just like in front of you. If you could do that with life grip, you pull them and then like as they're being pulled, you can turn and then they'll follow. You know what I mean? Then you could drop them on other high grounds and stuff and like other positions. I think that could be interesting. And if you don't, then they just get pulled to you. But again, like that's probably like a troll issue. That's the problem with, like, that's the problem with grip, right? Like you have to, it's not the fact that getting like using other people's abilities or like disrupting their game plan is, it is an issue, but I don't think that's the main issue they're concerned about. The main issue is trolling. So that's really hard, especially in a game like this, you know, in a game with big, like, with pits and all this other shit that can get in the way. Tahm Kench being able to eat his allies has always been incredibly powerful. They even moved it to his ult so they can make the cooldown longer. Holy shit. But he was essentially pro play only in the support role due to the high situational awareness required. Do you think there's a way to introduce more interaction to the grip recipient to alleviate the troll potential? They've talked about this all the time. So there is technically a way to cancel grip. You need a movement ability to do it, and you have to use your movement ability in the first couple like half seconds of grip. Um, which is, not every character is gonna be able to do it. They've always talked about, should there be a way to deny it? Like, I don't want the grip, right? Can I cancel it mid grip? And the reason they don't do that, at least this is how they've described it, is that they don't want your team to just say like no. Like, you're trying to make a play and then your teammate makes the wrong call, right? They don't want it to be like a two-way street in like, I have to make the right grip and my teammate has to recognize that this is the right grip, right? And not cancel it. You're right. Like, in pro play, anything could, like, you could do anything in pro play and it'd be fine. But for the main game, it is really tough. Um, yeah, I don't know honestly. Um, I don't think they would want people to cancel it. They've already talked about that, and I don't think that's the right solution. Um, yeah, that's tough. If you had any kind of control over where you go, where you get dropped off, maybe, if you could like hold right or left or back or forward and kind of give yourself some movement, I don't know, really. It's tough. That's interesting though. I think that's interesting to think about. I wish that, trolling and comp didn't really exist and that you could just do whatever you wanted and people would play the game properly and not be, you know, terrible about it. But that's not the world we live in. So you have to take that into consideration before anything really. Um oh, that was the one thing I didn't mention about the platforms, but by nature of their ability, like by the wall platform, you could totally boop your teammates off the edge. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. You totally could just like, oh, it pushed me off, Um, so yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. It's really tough. Fortnite. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. Ah, fuck, yeah, you're right. I'll just, yeah, fuck, you're right. Uh, yeah. I didn't think about that. I'm just gonna delete it. Thank you, Alec. I appreciate that. Fortnite it is.